As we become more aware of who we are, as we become more aware that our beliefs are creating our reality, as we become more aware that we can consciously decide our reality from the power of intention and the power of choice, that's where things really begin to change.
Hello. I'm making a commentary on Aaron Doughty. I hope I said his name right. His video, 3 things you agreed to before you were born, and you forgot these. It's kind of in the realm of soul contracts to me, but it could be outside of that. I'm doing a really big, heavy-duty interpretation of a soul contract belief soon, and so I thought I would proceed with this video. And he's talking about the things that we agreed to before we came into being who we are at this moment. And I do have some problems with soul contract and the things that we agree to, because it's kind of predestination in a way. But then I'm also of the Zen mind. There is only this moment now, which means all of the past, all of the future, and all of the now is happening right here, right now, as you listen to this.
In order for us to really have an experience that we can learn from, we have to forget who we are. It's the idea that you're playing a video game, and if you were to know that you're just playing a video game, you might not take it serious, you might not really relate to it, but if when you're playing the video game you actually believe that is who you are, then what happens is it's a very different experience. You actually relate to it. You actually learn from a deep level of experience.
The first thing he says is that we forget who we are, and it makes it so when we're immersed in our life, we believe all the things that are happening is realities. It's like a game in a way, and he described it as if you were playing a video game and you kind of get caught up in it and you sort of forget yourself. I do believe life is like that. I don't know necessarily there's a purpose in forgetting. However, I do agree with him when he says we forget that we are immortal spiritual beings. Can you imagine what our world would be like if we remembered that we are spiritual, immortal souls and divine sparks of God? What a beautiful world.
Now that's one of the purposes of that agreement that you made. That second off, you are an immortal spiritual being having a temporary human experience. And when you come here and you are conditioned growing up, you forget that is who you are. And then things can become scary because there's all of these things that the ego is threatened by. We get threatened by death. We're threatened by judgment for others. We're threatened by all these negative emotions.
It seems to me that he is saying that the forgetting creates fear in us and causes more problems, but the purpose of the forgetting is in order for us to learn. And believe me when I say this, I really have a problem with this idea that we make a contract with another soul, or we agree to come to Earth, and then we forget it, and then we start over and are supposed to learn. Coming to learn things, I don't understand it. I know Buddha taught that the earth is a perfect place to learn to grow. Something along those lines. It's kind of like there's so much opportunity here, and it's one of the best planets and places to go in order to learn. And to me, it's more about spiritual growth in order to grow spiritually or to have the experience. I'm not so sure about learning, because to me it implies that we're just babies. And I think we're perfect as we are. And in the Zen tradition, the Zen Buddhist tradition, there is nothing that needs to be corrected because we're already perfect as we are. We're already the Buddha within, and this is spiritual stuff. It can be hard to explain sometimes.
No matter how kind you are, German children will always be kinder. Kinder is kids in German. It's funny.
Script. Now, this is a personal belief of mine, but I believe that we choose our parents when we come into life. I believe that from a higher level perspective, there are certain themes that we have in our life that we are meant to experience. And that from those themes, there are certain things that we can learn.
I personally not so into the idea that we choose our parents. Although I do know that there are some reincarnation stories of children when they're young before they start kind of getting the social conditioning, and they talk about how they talk to their mom and say how they saw them from heaven and they decided to go to them. So it's possible to happen where we choose the parents. And I think that explains sort of like, well, if we choose to be born at a certain time period and certain parents, there's going to be certain social conditioning. And I personally don't know. It's going back to that learning thing. For me, it's more about experience. It's about having experiences. And I find that different from learning.
It's almost like our purpose of our life is to start to remember this about ourselves. Start to remember that we logged into this game of life in a metaphorical type way so that we could become more aware of who we really are.
Aaron proposes that the purpose of life is to remember our true self, that the whole reason, not the whole, because he obviously gave 3 things we forgot. It's not the whole reason. One of the reasons is to forget that we are divine sparks of God, and then we incarnate and get caught up in the reality and then express ourselves in that reality. And he also talked about how we'll do things to take away the pain of being in this reality because we're disconnected from our true self. There's a lot of teachers out there who talk about the Christ within, the Buddha within, just having that, in Kabbalah and the Jewish tradition, it's the spark of God. There's a lot of teachers that teach about that, and we reconnect. Well, so now I'm going to talk about Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce gave a reading. Edgar Cayce was a guy who went into a trance, and he was able to diagnose people from his trance, like what they had medically wrong with them and things that they need to do. And one of the things that he talked about was that we used to remember, and then we got caught up in this, and then eventually it's sort of like through the generations we've forgotten and became kind of like animalistic of that. And my question would be, what is the purpose of forgetting to remember? We could have our whole culture be completely different if we knew that from the beginning, and that as Christ taught, the kingdom of God is within. It's up to us. It's all in our mind. Everything is mind's creation.
And that we can really remember who we prefer to be. So this makes it so much easier, because then we can start to relate to parts of our life that we don't prefer as much and see that it may have happened for a reason.
There's a reason for everything has not really resonated with me. Having worked with incarcerated folks, I really don't think that some of those situations that people have been through where someone life was taken, and they're like 6 years old, and the family has to live with the consequences of that. And to say, well, there's a reason that little girl or little boy was killed, and there's a reason the family has to go through that. I do understand the thought behind it, to me, which is sort of what Aaron may be saying is like there's a purpose to our life. More so, there's a purpose to our life. And when we have a purpose, we have meaning for our life. The idea that there's a reason behind everything, like God said, okay, I'm going to let this happen. I can't get into that kind of thinking for myself. I just think that when you have some large suffering event in your life that's more than one can bear, our minds can go to places to help take care of ourselves. And I think this beautiful thing to do is just to become empowered by our life circumstances rather than let them drag us down into the muck of muck. And sometimes we have to be in the muck until we can get out, or we have loved ones who help us out. But that's the purpose to me in my mind is we're here for each other. The reason that we're here is we're here for each other to help each other make it through life and do this in a wonderful, beautiful way, because it can be, because everything is mind's creation and the kingdom of God is within. It's up to us. It's not up to God. It's not up to our neighbor. It's up to us. The meaning of our life is on us. And we can do with it what we can in any circumstance.
And please subscribe.
And if you're watching this video especially, you have the ability after your life to then choose who you prefer to be, or to just re-emerge with your higher self or a higher dimensional aspect, whatever we want to call it. And I believe that because with conscious awareness, we plug ourselves out of believing that we are our ego, that we are victims of any type of circumstance, and we can then consciously decide. Most likely if you're watching this video, you're aware that you have intention that you can put into your life and that you can change your life experience with that intention, and that also leaks into going beyond just our life experience. That's why awareness is such a powerful thing.
I agree with him on a lot of levels on what he's talking about here. He is basically saying that once we die or pass away from this one incarnation that we have, we go back into, let's just call it heaven. We just go to heaven, and we're in this place, this dimension or realm, where we once again choose or make a decision about the next life, or if we want, we can just remain there. It's up to our soul what we would like to do. And so he's basically saying that you have the programming to forget in order, when you incarnate, to do the things that you do, and you can awaken and understand that in a lifetime. So somebody can become a meditator or a spiritual practitioner, and then they realize that this is not all there is. And then there are folks who don't realize that. They're just in the realm of suffering, which this earth has the opportunity to do so many realms. One of them being the realm of suffering, where our life circumstances take over our minds. We react from that place. That's why there's a lot of suffering, and people want revenge, and they get angry because they can't control, because there's not this understanding. It's on a surface level of operation, like this is it. This is all there is. However, if one starts to meditate or goes to church or whatever spiritual practice one chooses to do, they can understand and remove themselves from the situation and not react to what it is that is happening to end suffering. It's in the mind. Again, here I am. Hello. I'm a meditator. I think it's the best thing ever to help ourselves learn about ourselves and our habit minds. Go meditate. Go meditate.
Now, the second thing that we agreed to when we came into this life is that meaning is something we give to everything in our life experience. Now, this is a beautiful thing. Some people get kind of scared with this because they realize how much power that they have over what they experience in their life because they choose how they relate to the outer circumstances. We choose what that barrier is. Now, understand that anything you experience in your life is fundamentally neutral.
So he's saying the first thing that we agree to before we're born. So we're in the heaven realm deciding on our next lifetime because we make the decisions about that. And then we forget that is the first decision. We forget that we did that. And then the second thing is that we have meaning. So we have meaning in the things. We give it the meaning. And this is a huge Buddhist philosophy. Buddha taught that everything is mind's creation. And Aaron is saying that it's neutral, that things are neutral, that there isn't a good and bad. And that's a way of explaining that there is, to me, this is my opinion about it, of course, is just that in neutrality, there is no definition. There's no definition of what something is good or bad, because we are big time in the realm of duality, good or bad, and our brains work that way, and so it's hard to see that there's a purpose or a meaning behind the actions, and that we define it. So in Buddhist philosophy, everything is mind's creation. We decide what it means. It's our perception of how something is. So someone can be coming up to us dressed in looks, kind of run down clothes, and they're not well, and they start to say something, and our mind immediately can perceive what it is before it happens. There's a lot of factors in that. I'm just going to simplify this. Our mind can think, oh, this is a homeless guy who's going to start begging, right? It could be someone saying, I have this wallet I found, is it yours? It could be someone asking for directions, but our first immediate thought is the thing that gives something meaning. There's no investigation into our habit mind about why we respond the way we do. So his take on that we give things meaning is correct in the sense that everything is mind's creation. It is our perception, our projections, and our understandings of life.
If we think that certain experiences in our life are negative, we are separating them from who we are. We are separating them from the natural essence of who we prefer to be, and that gap many times will be resistance.
It's a way of saying that we've separated ourselves from our own decision, which we made before we were born. We made these 3 decisions. We decided to forget who our true self is. Then we have this meaning, and we see the events in our lives as negative. And then that puts us into this negative way of living, which obviously we can see that happens a lot out there. People have forgotten who they truly are, and we live in a world that has war, that has suffering, that people starve to death. There's so much going on, and that's because our perception is that someone is out to get us, that nothing is good is going to happen to us. And these are conditions that do happen in a lifetime, but his understanding of it is that it separates us from what we really came here to do. We came here to find our true self and to learn things.
There's so many times in my life where negative things happened, and I simply just decided that I was going to give it a positive meaning, and because I did that, positive effects came out of it. It's almost like as I give something positive meaning, I line up life tracks of things that are positive that could happen, but the same type of time, there are potentials of the negative side of things that could happen if I identified with that.
It's a choice how we can view things. We can view things to be beneficial for us, even if it's about suffering, and we can take some of the things that have happened to us that have been very difficult in our life, and we can see how we spiritually grew. It's our focus. And we all have that ability to bring about the focus on whatever level we're at. Some people, if they have a traumatic brain injury or something, they're not going to focus from the same level. And I believe Aaron would say, well, that was a life choice that we made before we incarnated, to have a brain injury and to respond negatively from that brain injury. And my challenge is, if we have that brain injury and we can't operate from the level of remembering, then do we suffer through this lifetime with that brain injury, unable to get out of it because it's a medical condition?
But I believe that the main one out of all three of those is to become awake to who we are really meant to be, to wake up from this dream of life, to realize that we are immortal spiritual beings having temporary human experiences.
I love this idea that we remember who we are, that we are immortal, and there are people who have the inability to remember because of their social conditions and circumstances. And so those of us who do remember need to help create a world where it's understood that some of us are having life experiences, that there is an inability to remember our true selves and not buy into the negativity, and also not try to override their spiritual growth and process. Walking the tightrope of life.
There's a certain hallway that we agreed to go down, that what we can do is begin to align with that, begin to follow the emotion of what that is, to understand that theme, and that with this whole process, the most important thing is the awareness we have for who we are. As we become aware, everything begins to change.
Aaron's take is that the third thing we forgot before we came here was our goal in life. The meaning, the purpose of our life, that we forgot. We agreed to do certain things like become a mother or a teacher or an accountant or whatever it is, that we forgot that, and then we have to uncover it in a way, and then we live out that life purpose. And once we start to remember all these three things that we've forgotten, we can live a better, fuller life.
With this whole process, the most important thing is the awareness we have for who we are. As we become aware, everything begins to change. So,
go meditate, go meditate, go meditate, go meditate. You got this.
awareness is the whole meaning of life.